What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F123 for My Team Career Mode Season 1 round number 13, the United States Grand Prix. First time at COTA in this game, and it is of course the sprint weekend in this game, so that's going to mean a bit more running with COTA. It's been one of those tracks where I've actually not run very much in the previous games because I think it's happened in both games where I had it on in the season, but then issues meant that we didn't end up running at this track as often as we perhaps we're supposed to, so we're gonna run it this time around. We may not run here next season because I might, bring in Miami, probably get rid of one of the American races, and it'll probably be this one, but yeah, we are running it this time around. Looking at R&D, we've actually caught back up to, well, not just Aston Martin, but pretty much everyone here. Ferrari have actually branched a little bit away from the rest. Red Bull actually starting to fall back a little bit into the clutches of Mercedes, Aston Martin, and now my team. But everybody else is so ridiculously close. I can't believe how close everybody is on R&D in this game, in this season. It's going to be interesting when we get into Season 2 because I have had a message saying that there probably is going to be a regulation change. Don't know what that is just yet, but yeah, hopefully we'll get to know what that is in the next couple of races. So perhaps from now onwards, maybe I probably won't be doing many, if any, R&D upgrades. I'm just waiting to see what the regulation change is going to be. So we get into qualifying for Q1. Of course, we've got another Esses, quick Esses section in this game. Once again, in this game, so much nicer to drive through those sections compared to in like F122 especially. Just the car drives so much better, just grips so much better, and it's just so much funner to drive through those sections because they are sections that in previous games, mainly in F122, I've really struggled with. We get through to Q2, no worries at all. Jack Doohan, my teammate, also gets through in P12 there, so that's a pretty good time from him. No real shocks out in Q1. I mean, Lance Stroll, he shouldn't be going out in Q1 in the Aston Martin, but it seems to happen quite a lot, so it's not really a shock, although he still shouldn't really be doing it. Q2, and I was absolutely flying on this lap. We got a purple first sector here, really just getting to grooves and getting into the feel of this track through that first sector especially, and we're actually purple through sector 2 as well. We're really going for it on this lap. We currently sit P3 after my first flying run, and this is another run on a new set of tyres. I think in Q1 I did 2 runs. First of all, it was a new set obviously, and then the second run I think was on the same set, so I maybe didn't go quite as quick, or didn't, go much quicker than I maybe could have on a new set, but this time in Q2 we've run brand new sets back to back, and it's paid off. It's been P1 in Q2, I mean it is only Q2, but P1 we were flying in qualifying 2 there. Doohan, unfortunately, only P16. I was hoping that he'd at least be towards the, kind of top end of the, like 11, 12, 13, I was hoping, but P16 for Doohan, so not quite where I was hoping. I was hoping at least maybe he'd get into Q3, or at least be at the top end of the Q2 knockout zone. And then we get into Q3, and I'm going to be honest, wasn't my best lap ever. I think we absolutely flung it around in Q2, got a great lap time, and in Q3 made a few mistakes, a little bit wide, a little bit wonky through this sector here. This is the bit that I absolutely nailed in Q2. Didn't quite do it as well. I think I was about a tenth or two slower through that first sector, then maybe a little bit unhappy through there as well. Just not the best first sector here, especially compared to what I'd done in Q2. As we now head onto the big long back straight here, this is where our car is very good with the amazing straight line speed and amazing engine of our car. Open the DRS and power down the straight. We are so quick, buzzing off the limiter as we do. As we break into the next corner, Sainz goes quickest at the moment, and sector 2, it's a better sector 2, but yeah, still not the best lap time here, as I think it might have been Hamilton, was it now, going quicker again. We head through here now. This is a very fun part of the track right here, as we head around this corner flat out, round the right corner here, but just have to be a little bit careful because the car can spin out, get a little skippy if you're not careful. As we head into the final corner, a bit of an awkward break, but we head around the final corner, DRS enabled for this last little bit. In the end, it's P7. It's not quite, it's the lucky P7. We seem to be always, we're car number 7, we're always qualifying P7. it's not quite as good as I was hoping. We do beat Norris, we beat Alonso as well in the Aston Martin, so that's good, and Ocon in the Alpine, but P7 for us is a Mercedes front row lockout by the looks of it for the sprint race. So let's see what the sprint race in the USA has to offer.
Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position. And it's Lewis Hamilton alongside. Looking at the rest of today's grid, we have Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Davies, Norris, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Bottas, Oscar Piastri, Magnussen, Albon, Doohan, Stroll, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Joe, Sargent, and Nick de Vries. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
Alright, so here we go for the sprint race in Texas, the Austin Circuit of the Americas. 5 red lights are out and away we go. It is a terrible start for Charles Leclerc ahead of us. We're going to get ahead of him. We're also going to get ahead of another car there, and we're actually side by side with Perez. Is it Perez? No, it's Verstappen as we head into turn 1. He's also side by side with Hamilton though, who also looks like he's not had a great start. He was on the front row of the grid with his teammate. He's now down to P4. We're up to P5, so it's a good start for us here in the sprint race, making up 2 positions already. It looks like Norris has actually followed us through because he's right behind us, so we got a good start, Norris got a good start. It looks like, I'm guessing, Perez and Leclerc both with pretty bad starts there, falling down the order. As we continue on here, everybody on the medium compound tyres for this sprint race. I guess people thinking that the softs not going to quite do it here, but maybe the softs will be used in the main Grand Prix. As we head through, there are already gaps forming here in this kind of top group. It looks like Perez and Leclerc may be about to have a little battle at the end of the straight behind us as we just follow Hamilton through. So it looks like Russell still leads the way from Carlos Sainz, who's really been stepping up his game in the Ferrari in these last few races, with Verstappen 3rd, Hamilton 4th. So this is interesting because the last few races, out of the top 3 in the championship, Leclerc's been doing really well. Russell and Verstappen have had a couple of howler races the last few races. This time though, Russell and Verstappen are up the front, and Leclerc, he's had a terrible start. It is only the sprint race, but Leclerc already down into, I think, P7 from what was, P4 on the grid? Yeah, we'll have a look at it here. This is an onboard from might have been P5 actually, from Leclerc. It's a terrible start from him. Look, he's been overtaken by myself, by Perez, by Lando Norris. He's actually battling Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo as they head through turn 1, so that is not a good start for the championship leader. And this is Lewis Hamilton off 2nd place on the grid. He's had a terrible start. He's overtaken by Sainz before they even get into turn 1. He heads a very tight line through turn 1 and is then side by side with Verstappen. I think I was also there on the outside as well, so that's why Hamilton took a really tight line. A couple of laps into the race, and Alonso's also had a not particularly great start, or maybe it's that Bottas has had a really good start, because he, I believe, is now in the top 10 and is fighting with Alonso as they go side by side through this next section. Bottas not giving this one up too easily in the Alfa Romeo, wanting to score some more points for that team because they are currently, I think, 10th place, maybe 9th or 10th place, with only a couple of points to their name. But he's fighting with Fernando Alonso here, the 2-time champion, having a really good battle right now. But Alonso does manage to get back ahead of Bottas, so he's going to look to get away from the Finn. As behind me, Lando Norris now coming under fire from Sergio Perez. Norris has 2 cars behind him that had bad starts, 2 faster cars behind him, and Perez gets through quite easily. And now Leclerc is going to look to go for a move on Norris when he gets the chance, but Perez is past Lando Norris and now will chase after me. Carlos Sainz at the front of the grid. Well, he's in 2nd place. Russell still leads the way, but Sainz is pressurizing Russell into this next corner off the back straight. He's looking around the outside, but Russell defends well. A little bit of a scrape, I think, from front wing to the back bumper of Russell's car, but Russell does defend from Sainz. Now with Perez broken away from these guys, Norris no longer has DRS from him, and Leclerc can dive up the inside off the back straight. Norris is going to fight this one though. Only 4 laps to go in this race, lap 6 of lap 10 of the sprint race. Norris keeping this position at the moment, doing a great job in the McLaren, but Leclerc is determined to get past and minimise the damage caused by him having a terrible start and just generally not having a good qualifying, to minimise the damage from Russell and Verstappen, who are currently sitting in the top 3. They're going to still keep fighting these two though, with Norris not wanting to give this one up easily, wants to score the maximum amount of points that he can in that McLaren car. But as they head around the final corner, it looks like Leclerc is ahead and he has the DRS as well. Norris though is tucking up right behind him to see if he can do anything. He's making Leclerc go defensive into turn 1, but in the end it's not going to matter. Leclerc gets up another position. We just kind of carrying on here with the cars ahead. We can't keep with Hamilton, Verstappen, Sainz and Russell. We just don't have the pace, and we're kind of in no man's land for the entirety of this sprint, because Perez is the car behind us. He is catching us fairly slowly. Probably not, he might catch us by the end of the race, but I don't know. We're just kind of in this no man's land at the moment, as we have a look back at the battle for the lead here, and it is a battle of 4 cars. Russell still leads the way here. Sainz, after that one little look, hasn't really been able to do anything for the rest of this race. Russell just managing to control this one at the moment, but it is a big pack of 4 cars here. They're all very close to each other, with Verstappen just behind. He is he's in 3rd in the championship out of the main 3 contenders here, as Hamilton is at the back of this train, but it looks like he might have an issue on this penultimate lap of the sprint, and sure enough, just ahead of us, there's yellow flags out. Hamilton looks to be pulling over. As he pulls over to the right, smoke plumes out of the back of his car, and Lewis Hamilton is out of the sprint race in the USA. That is terrible for him, because it means he's going to be starting the main Grand Prix right from the back, so very unfortunate for him. And thanks to Hamilton's retirement, we're going to come home to finish in P4. We were getting caught by Perez in the end. A couple more laps and he would have been right within DRS. Probably one more lap and he would have been within DRS. And whether he would have been able to overtake us is another story with our supreme straight line speed. But we did manage to come home for P4, so that's going to give us a good starting position for the main Grand Prix tomorrow. And some good points in the bag as well. What is that? 5 points for us. That's very good. Leclerc got back up to 6, so he scores at least 3 points here to minimise the damage. DNF for Hamilton and for Albon as well, also another mechanical failure towards the start of the sprint race. But it's now time for the main Grand Prix for the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas.
Well, you don't need me to remind you that Formula One is now so beloved in the United States that we race here 3 times a year. But let's give respect to COTA, or the Circuit of the Americas, to give it its full name. This place laid the foundations for this moment and still remains the host of the US Grand Prix. It's the Circuit of the Americas then, situated 14 miles outside of the great city of Austin. This is a 3.6 mile lap with 20 corners, 10 to the left and 10 to the right, and top speeds of around 200 miles per hour. Overtaking opportunities are available into turns 1 and 12, especially with that rear wing DRS wide open. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. What a qualifying yesterday for George Russell. He'll start today's race from pole position. And Max Verstappen lines up alongside. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Davies, Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Sainz, Norris, Oscar Piastri, Gasly, Bottas, Doohan, Magnussen, Stroll, Perez, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, Joe, Sargent, De Vries, Ocon, Hamilton, and Alex Albon picks up the last spot on the grid. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. And joining me again for the race today, Natalie Pinkham. Let's talk about Davies. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within the team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun. doing what they do. And that has definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
Alright, so we're actually starting P3 on the grid as Carlos Sainz has taken a grid penalty. He'll start down in P6 as it's lights out very quickly and away we go. A mixture of tyres here. We're on the soft compound with Russell and Alonso, but Verstappen and Leclerc both on the mediums as Leclerc has a look up the inside of us into turn 1. We can hear my engineer talking about some wear. We've got pretty bad wear on the MGU-H. I wanted to not take a grid penalty for this race. We're going to have to take a grid penalty for Mexico though, for the MGU-H, maybe the turbo as well. I didn't realise, but the turbo is pretty worn too, and it's not going to get us to the end of the season. Might get us past the next race, but is not going to get us to the end of the season. So we may be taking a 10 or possibly 15 place grid penalty for the next race in Mexico. But at the moment we've got this race to focus on, P3 on the grid, on the soft tyres. Verstappen though on those mediums is pretty rapid. I was kind of expecting to maybe challenge Verstappen on, you know, being on the better compound tyres, but he's got some pretty considerable pace here, and Russell also has good pace, but he is on the soft tyres, and we're being hounded by Leclerc here a little bit. My pace looked pretty promising in the sprint. I mean, I didn't have the pace of the top guys, but I wasn't far off when we were all on the same tyre. I thought being on a better compound of tyre, I would have at least been able to fight with Verstappen, but he's almost got a second gap to us already. So, yeah, pace here not looking amazing. I've actually filled up, well, I've fueled up the car about the same amount as I usually do, but as we get through this race, it turns out that we really don't use a lot of fuel on this track. So I think for future I'll be fueling the car even lower because, yeah, really maybe a bit too heavy on the fuel, but from what I can tell the AI don't really seem to underfuel the car a whole lot. They seem to put way too much fuel in usually, at least they did on previous games. Sergio Perez making his way through the order because he had a grid penalty starting down in P14 I believe it was. He's now fighting with Valtteri Bottas. Bottas has been having quite a lot of action with some of the top drivers here, but Perez, a nice little overtake through the Esses section there to get past the flying Finn to make his way further up the order. Perez has not had a very good season, to be fair. No wins, only a couple of podiums. He's been very good in qualifying, but yeah, very strange for Perez, kind of opposite to what he's like in real life. As behind we have Carlos Sainz trying to make a move on Lando Norris, because with that grid penalty he started P6, but I think he's actually had a bit of a bad start as well, because I think he was ahead of Norris. He wasn't this far back. Anyway, it looks like he's quite a bit further back maybe here, but is now up a position to get ahead of Lando Norris. As we continue on, and like I said, we're really losing time to the cars ahead here, and Leclerc's right behind us on the medium tyres, and I just think, you know what, there's no point fighting him here because we do not have the pace of these top guys. So we're not even going to bother deploying ERS. We don't have a whole lot to play with anyway, and well, we're not too bad at the moment, but once we start using it, it's going to really deplete. So I end up just letting Leclerc go. I was hoping to be able to stay within his DRS, but he just kind of buggered off ahead, and we now don't have DRS. He's ahead of us, and now we've got Alonso behind us on the soft tyres with Sainz behind him. So things could get interesting here because Alonso I think I can beat, or I can at least fight with. But yeah, now we don't have DRS to defend ourselves, so that's going to be interesting as we head through the Esses section in lap number 8. Really do love this part of the track on this game, so fun to drive. But then this time we get it sideways and we have a massive sideways moment through the next corner as I tried to correct it. That allows Alonso to get up the inside. We're then kind of stuck in an awkward position and kind of have to let Sainz go through as well, so we've lost 2 positions there because of a mistake from myself, just pushing a bit too hard through the Esses section. Absolutely had a massive sideways moment, and a couple of laps later I'm going to decide to come into the pits off the soft compound tyres. We're boxing 1 lap earlier than I was originally planning to, but onto the hard compound tyres because we don't have a new set of mediums, so it's got to be hard tyres for this race. Mediums might have been a bit of a push to get to the end anyway, but yeah, we don't have a new set anyway. And as we come out of the pits here, we have a bit of a gaggle of cars. We slam on the brakes into turn 1, but it's not going to be enough, and we're going to smack into the rear left tyre of Zhou Guanyu. I was completely on the brakes coming into turn 1, but the way that it fires you into turn 1 out of the pits, we made contact with Zhou. Thankfully no damage, but yeah, a little bit messy, a little bit clunky there. As further up the order, Carlos Sainz now has managed to get past Fernando Alonso, so he is on a recovery drive in that Ferrari after his P2 finish in the sprint, but a penalty. He's making his way back through the order. Lewis Hamilton is also a driver making his way through the order. Started on the back row of the grid in P21. He's gone for a late lunge there on Lance Stroll and has got the position done. Very nice overtake from Lewis Hamilton to get up another position to try and salvage anything from this race after his mechanical failure in the sprint and the grid penalty, starting on the back row of the grid with Alexander Albon. He's going to see what he can do in this race. We get past Zhou Guanyu on the straight, that same lap that we came out of the pits. You know, sorry to him for banging into him, but thankfully no damage was done at that point in time. We're now getting really slowed up by Tsunoda and Sargent up ahead though. They are so slow through these corners compared to us on older compound tyres. That may screw us over a little bit because I was hoping for an undercut here. Don't know if that's going to work, and it's not, because Alonso and Norris have both come out ahead of us as Tsunoda is looking for a move on Sargent through turn 1. We're going to get involved here as well. Sargent's having a look on Norris, who's just come out of the pits. It's 2 by 2 as we head into the Esses section. Tsunoda's still there on our outside. We need to try and shake him, keep within the track limit, and manage to just about do that. But then we are potentially going to get slowed up here by Sargent, because look how slow he is through this section. I have to basically turn left to avoid smacking into the back of him through there, because it is just these guys are so much slower cars. Well, I say so much slower anyway. With the R&D chart, they're actually not that much slower, but they are slower cars than us, and they're on tyres that they haven't pitted on yet. So we managed to make the move on Sargent down the back straight, but yeah, definitely a bit of time lost there, and we have lost positions to well, actually not to Alonso, because he got past us anyway, didn't he, with that issue, but we've lost a position to Norris thanks to all those shenanigans. As this is actually at the front of the grid here, Leclerc and Verstappen have now come together, and Leclerc has gotten past Verstappen, so showing very good pace in that Ferrari after not the best sprint race. He is now up into a net P2, Leclerc, so now it's just Russell leading the way, who is on a different strategy to these guys, because Russell started on the softs, Leclerc and Verstappen both started on the medium compound tyres. As there's a battle brewing ahead of us, Norris got past, I think it was Alonso, or maybe it was Ocon, and now there's going to be 2 by 2 as we head into this corner. Alonso and Norris bang tyres. We're side by side with Esteban Ocon, who I also think hasn't come into the pits yet, off starting on medium tyres. We've gotten past Ocon. Norris manages to, I'm not sure if he stayed ahead of Alonso or if Alonso was already ahead of him, I'm not 100% sure, as now Verstappen came into the pits a couple of laps after Leclerc, and he's really lost out here because Leclerc's gone off up the road in P2, and Verstappen's now actually in the clutches of Carlos Sainz in the other Ferrari, so this really hasn't worked for Verstappen here. Hamilton still making his way through the order as well. He's now going for a move on my teammate for what I believe is P11, so he's not quite in the points yet, but he's got the move done on Doohan, and will now chase down, I believe, Oscar Piastri for the final points position in this race. We are now hooked up behind Alonso and Norris, and got a bit of a train here with Gasly and Perez behind us as well. But as we have a look, Alonso is going to have a look to the inside of Norris. Norris is so slow down the main straight. We go either side of him. We then make contact with Alonso as he kind of drifts onto the racing line as we head into the braking zone. And that finds us now side by side with Norris. But we're going to get ahead of him and get up a position there. But yeah, crazy stuff there. Norris was just a sitting duck with absolutely nothing he could do, with 2 cars flying past either side of him. And now this is the battle for the lead of the race. Leclerc has caught up to George Russell, top 2 in the championship, fighting for the top 2 positions. Leclerc can't quite get the position done, can't quite get the move done there. But on to the next lap, lap 25, he's going to go for it again. This time though, as they head up to turn 1, he's going to go to the inside of Russell, who doesn't quite expect it. A little bit of argy-bargy, but Leclerc gets a fairly clean move done, and he's up into the lead of the United States Grand Prix. This has been quite the recovery drive for Leclerc, and he needs this to bridge his gap at the top of the Drivers' Championship. Sergio Perez trying to make moves as well. He's got Pierre Gasly ahead of him on the medium compound tyres, was looking very racy, but towards the last laps of this race has now lost a little bit of pace. I believe he started on softs and has done a soft to medium, because obviously he must have had an extra pair of medium tyres. So Meni was quick in the middle part of the race, but he is slowing down towards the end. Lap 27 of 28, and now Alonso's the car ahead of us. We've been stuck behind him for quite a few laps here with not really able to do anything, but this time we're powering down the main straight with DRS and with ERS, and we're going to shove our way to the inside, brake late into this corner and get ahead of Alonso to get up into P5, and now we've just got to defend for one more lap. And onto the final lap of the Grand Prix, Hamilton is going for the move on Piastri for P10 in this race. He's trying to salvage just one measly point from starting at the back of the grid. Hamilton gets up to P10, so it's not a worthless weekend for Hamilton. He will score 1 point in this United States Grand Prix weekend. Charles Leclerc comes through to win the US Grand Prix to extend his lead of the Drivers' Championship. It is looking good for Leclerc in this championship now. We're going to come through after a bit of pressure from Alonso on the final lap to finish P5. It's 2 positions from where we qualified, but to be fair, we didn't have the pace to challenge for a podium in this race. The fact that we've beaten Alonso is good. We could have maybe been a bit further ahead if we didn't make that mistake earlier on, but it was a decent race, not the most exciting, but that's this race done.
What a drive that was to take the win for Ferrari today. So Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
Quite simply, a driver is nothing without the team behind them. So, a deserved winner, but we do have to give a shout out to the team in the pit lane and back at the factory. Very much a collaborative process.
Ferrari are at it again. An excellent performance at today's Grand Prix, and they're certainly a team that know what they're doing out there.
So there we go, Charles Leclerc wins the United States Grand Prix, George Russell comes home P2, and Max Verstappen P3. So it is the top 3 in the championship in top 3 order on the podium. So that just means that each driver gets a little bit further ahead of the driver behind them, and that is especially good for Leclerc here, because I believe he now has a full wins worth of points ahead of George Russell, and Verstappen's a little bit further behind him, so we'll have a look at that in a moment. But very nice race there for them guys. We had a few good battles in that race, those like almost 4 wide moments at some points, definitely 3 wide, and a lot of 2 wide action, but it wasn't the most exciting race in the world, but it was decent enough, I suppose. Jack Doohan comes home for P12, so just outside the points for him. I think a decent enough drive. He could have done a little bit better, but I think it's fair enough. Kevin Magnussen, the only DNF of this race, just a mechanical failure. And when we look at the Drivers' Championship, Leclerc now has a 30-point lead over George Russell. He has a 48-point lead over Verstappen, so Verstappen's 18 points behind Russell. Then Sainz is 66 points behind Leclerc, and Hamilton is 84 points behind Leclerc. And I worked it out, there's 86 points available in these last 3 main races plus a sprint. So technically Hamilton is still in with a shot of the championship. So it is only the top 5 who are technically now in with a shot, but it is really the top 3. And Leclerc has almost already got one hand on the trophy. And in the Constructors, Ferrari are still a decent way ahead of the Constructors' Championship, ahead of Mercedes and Red Bull. We are fairly decently ahead of Aston Martin, but it's still going to be a fight if those guys can improve towards the end of the season. And yeah, that is it going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.